This is the moment where transformation begins, not with strategies or tactics, but with the awakening of your inner potential. You are far more powerful than you've been taught to believe. And as this message unfolds, you will feel that power returning to you. Stay with this truth. Let it settle. Let it open something inside you. Because once you understand this law, you'll never see money or yourself the same way again. When you begin to understand that wealth starts in the mind, something within you quietly wakes up. You start noticing the thoughts you've allowed to shape your identity. You recognize the silent beliefs you accepted as truth simply because they were familiar. And as you look deeper, you begin to see how much power you've given to fear without ever realizing it. Fear has convinced you that you're not ready, not capable, not worthy of more. But the moment you expose that lie, your entire relationship with money begins to shift. This shift happens when you understand that money flows to value, and value flows from the way you think. You are not limited by your circumstances. You are limited by the boundaries of your thinking. When your mind is trained to see obstacles, you stop before you even begin. But when your mind is trained to see possibilities, you naturally become a creator of value. This is the foundation of financial growth. The more you expand who you are, the more value you offer. And the more value you offer, the more the world responds with opportunity. Most people never tap into this potential because they underestimate the power of their own thoughts. They wait for confidence to appear. They wait for clarity, for motivation, for permission. But waiting keeps you trapped. Growth begins the moment you decide to think differently, even if you don't feel ready. You don't need perfection to create value. You need intention. You need willingness. You need the courage to stop shrinking and start expanding. When you expand your thinking, you stop asking, what if it doesn't work? And you start asking, what skill can I build? What problem can I solve? What strength can I develop? These questions shift your identity. They turn you from someone who reacts to life into someone who creates life. Every skill you choose to build, every habit you strengthen, every fear you overcome becomes part of the value you carry. This is the kind of value that cannot be taken from you. It becomes your internal wealth, the source of every external result. And this is why you must stay committed to your growth, because your financial reality rises or falls with the quality of the value you offer. Not temporary value that fades when circumstances change, but deep internal value that grows as you grow. When you evolve, everything around you evolves. People see the difference in your confidence, your clarity, your discipline. They feel the strength in your presence. They recognize the mindset behind your actions. And that mindset is what attracts opportunities that once felt out of reach. You are not here to stay small. You are not here to live with the limitations you inherited. You are here to rise into your potential, to build a mind that generates solutions instead of excuses. You are capable of becoming someone who brings value wherever you go, someone who lifts others, someone who delivers results, someone who becomes impossible to overlook. And as this transformation unfolds, money stops feeling like a distant goal. It becomes the natural outcome of your growth. The world always responds to those who show up with intention, strength, and purpose. As you continue stepping into that version of yourself, you'll feel something powerful, the sense that you are finally taking control of your life. And that feeling is the beginning of every breakthrough you've been searching for. As you rise into the awareness of your own value, something even more powerful begins to take shape within you, a deeper hunger, a desire that refuses to be vague or passive. It pushes you to define what you truly want instead of settling for what you think you can get. This desire becomes the ignition point for all growth. It sharpens your focus, strengthens your decisions, and gives your actions direction. Without it, you drift. With it, you begin to move with purpose, clarity, and certainty. Desire is not a casual wish or a quiet hope. It is a force. It is the part of you that refuses to accept a life beneath your potential. It is the inner voice that says you were meant for more, even when your current circumstances suggest otherwise. When you honor this desire instead of suppressing it, you activate the energy that fuels progress. You stop apologizing for wanting a better life. You stop feeling guilty for aiming higher. You begin to understand that your desires are not selfish. They are signals. They are the compass guiding you toward the person you are capable of becoming. Most people never experience the power of desire because they never define it clearly. They say they want success or more money, but those words carry no emotional weight. They lack precision. They lack depth. They lack the intensity required to move the mind into action. But when you create a specific, personal, emotionally charged desire, everything changes. Your brain begins filtering the world differently. You start recognizing opportunities that match your intention. You develop the patience to stay committed and the strength to endure challenges. Your desire becomes a magnet pulling you toward the results you seek. This is why you must allow yourself to want boldly, not timidly, not cautiously, boldly. If you hold back your desire, you hold back your life. Desire is the fuel that makes discipline possible. It gives you the stamina to push through discomfort and the resilience to recover from setbacks. It creates the emotional fire that keeps you moving when the path becomes difficult. Without that internal fire, your motivation fades. But with it, your drive becomes unstoppable. Think about how different your life would feel if you fully allowed yourself to commit to what you truly want. Imagine waking up with a sense of direction instead of uncertainty. Imagine feeling pulled forward instead of pushed down. Imagine knowing exactly why you wake up, why you work, why you grow. That kind of clarity removes fear. It removes hesitation. It removes the emotional weight that keeps you stuck in the same patterns. And this is where transformation deepens. Because when your desire becomes definite, your identity begins to shift. You stop seeing yourself as someone who hopes for change and start seeing yourself as someone who creates it. You begin aligning your thoughts, your habits, and your decisions with the life you actually want instead of the life you're trying to escape. This alignment is powerful. It builds momentum. It strengthens confidence. It reinforces belief. Desire is not just the starting point of wealth. It is the engine behind every breakthrough. And when you allow your desire to become clear, strong, and unshakable, you awaken a version of yourself you may have forgotten existed, a version capable of far more than you've ever allowed yourself to believe. When your desire becomes clear, something remarkable begins to rise behind it. The quiet but unshakable belief that what you want is possible. This belief is not loud. It does not shout or demand attention. It grows slowly, steadily, deep within you. And this is where the real transformation begins. Because desire without belief creates frustration. But desire supported by faith creates movement. Faith is the mental certainty that your goals are not just wishes, but destinations your mind is already preparing to reach. Faith is not blind optimism. It is not pretending everything is perfect. It is choosing to trust your ability to grow through challenges instead of collapsing beneath them. It is the decision to believe in your potential, even when your circumstances have not yet caught up. When you carry faith, you stop needing external proof before you take action. You move first. You commit first. You believe first. And your life responds to that courage. Every breakthrough begins with a moment when you choose faith over fear. Fear tells you to stay where you are. Faith tells you to step into who you can become. Fear pulls your energy inward. Faith expands it. Fear makes you shrink. Faith makes you rise. And every time you choose faith, even in the smallest decisions, you strengthen the subconscious patterns that guide your success. You teach your mind to trust you. You teach yourself to act with conviction. This conviction changes the way you show up. It changes the way you speak, the way you think, and the way you move through the world. You begin to carry a presence that others can feel. People notice when you believe in what you're doing. They recognize your confidence. They sense your direction. And this inner shift draws opportunities toward you that would never appear for someone stuck in doubt. The world responds to belief because belief influences every action you take. Faith also changes the way you interpret challenges. Instead of seeing setbacks as proof that you're failing, you begin to see them as part of the process. You understand that growth never happens in a straight line. You realize that obstacles are not signals to stop, but signals to strengthen. Every challenge becomes a lesson that sharpens your mindset and prepares you for greater success. With faith, you don't collapse under pressure, you rise through it. And the more you strengthen this belief, the more your identity evolves. You stop viewing yourself through the lens of your past and start viewing yourself through the lens of your potential. You stop saying, I hope this works, and start saying, I will make this work. This shift may seem subtle, but it changes everything. It reshapes your thoughts. It redefines your habits. It rewires your emotional responses. It turns you into someone who persists, someone who adapts, someone who refuses to give up. Faith is not just a feeling, it is a choice. A choice to trust your intention, a choice to trust your path, a choice to trust the greater version of yourself that is waiting to be expressed. And when you choose faith repeatedly, you build a mental environment where wealth and success can finally take root. You no longer fight against your own doubt. You move with purpose, anchored by inner certainty. This is the mindset that elevates you. This is the power that turns desire into reality. As belief strengthens inside you, it begins shaping the one force that decides whether your life transforms or stays the same, your decisions. Every choice you make becomes a reflection of what you believe you deserve. When your belief is small, your decisions are small. You choose comfort over growth, routine over challenge, excuses over action. But when belief expands, your decisions align with the life you want instead of the life you fear. You stop acting from limitation and start acting from intention. You stop asking what is easy and start asking what is necessary. This shift in decision-making is the moment your life begins to accelerate, because every decision carries energy. Every decision shapes identity. Every decision either reinforces your old patterns or builds new ones. When you choose the actions that support your goal, even when they are uncomfortable, you create a chain of momentum that becomes impossible to ignore. Momentum doesn't appear magically. It is built decision by decision until your progress becomes unstoppable. You begin to understand that wealth is not created through giant leaps. It is created through consistent, aligned choices. Choices that reflect your vision, not your doubt. Choices that match your future, not your past. Choices that move you closer to who you want to be, even when the path feels uncertain. These choices are not always dramatic. Sometimes they are quiet, subtle, almost invisible to others. But each one carries power because each one shifts your identity toward strength. When you start making decisions from a place of belief, you stop negotiating with your limitations. You stop delaying what you know you need to do. You stop waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect plan, or the perfect confidence. You act now because you understand that taking action is what creates confidence. Action clears doubt. Action builds clarity. Action transforms intention into reality. And as you continue choosing action over avoidance, your inner world begins to change. You develop discipline where you once had inconsistency. You develop resilience where you once had hesitation. You develop a sense of responsibility for your own growth that becomes impossible to ignore. This responsibility is not heavy, it is empowering. It frees you from depending on luck or external validation. It puts your progress entirely in your hands where it has always belonged. These decisions also change how you see yourself. You begin to trust your ability to follow through. You begin to respect the commitment you show. You begin to recognize the strength you've been building quietly every day. And this self-respect becomes a foundation for everything else. It stabilizes your mind. It strengthens your confidence. It becomes the emotional core that supports your ambitions. The world responds differently when you carry this energy. People notice your seriousness. They see your consistency. They feel your determination. Opportunities that once seemed distant begin to appear. Doors that once felt locked begin to open, because life always responds to those who move with purpose. You are no longer waiting for permission. You are no longer hoping for change. You are creating it. Your decisions shape your destiny. And when your decisions align with belief, desire, and intention, your life begins to move toward wealth with a force that cannot be stopped. This is the power that separates those who dream from those who rise. This is the moment your future begins to shift in your favor. Every time you choose growth over comfort, you strengthen the part of you that refuses to settle for a half-lived life. You stop allowing temporary emotions to dictate permanent outcomes. You stop letting fear override your inner wisdom. You begin to understand that discomfort is not a sign you're failing. It's a signal that you're expanding. It's the pressure required to reshape the parts of you that once stayed small to survive. And when you honor that pressure instead of resisting it, you transform it into power. You convert doubt into clarity. You turn hesitation into movement. You become someone whose progress is no longer dependent on perfect circumstances, only on the decision to rise. The moment you stop apologizing for your needs, your standards, and your boundaries, your energy shifts. You stop shrinking to make others comfortable with your strength. You stop bending to maintain connections that drain you. You stop giving your emotional access to people who haven't earned it. You stop explaining yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. You finally understand that protecting your peace is not selfish, it's essential, because an unprotected mind becomes a breeding ground for chaos, but a guarded one becomes a sanctuary where clarity grows, confidence strengthens, and purpose becomes unmistakable. The more deeply you honor your inner world, the more the outer world changes in response. You start attracting people who value emotional responsibility, not chaos. You attract conversations that feed your spirit, not drain it. You attract opportunities aligned with your strengths rather than your fears. And most importantly, you attract a version of yourself who no longer chases validation, approval, or belonging in places that were never capable of offering them. You rise into a level of emotional maturity where your self-worth stops being negotiable. You stop asking who will accept you and start asking whether you accept yourself. Your past is no longer a weight you carry, but wisdom you use. You no longer see mistakes as proof of inadequacy, but as evidence that you were brave enough to attempt growth. You no longer attach your identity to old wounds that once defined you. Instead, those wounds become reminders of your endurance, your resilience, your capacity to rebuild from the inside out. You learn to separate who you were from who you are becoming. You stop expecting clarity from places of old pain and start allowing your present strength to lead the way. And with every step into this new self, you rewrite the emotional patterns you once thought were unchangeable. The more you step into your power, the less you tolerate emotional shortcuts. You stop craving quick fixes or superficial reassurance. You want depth, truth, integrity within yourself and from those around you. You want alignment, not convenience. You want consistency, not potential. You want peace that doesn't rely on others behaving a certain way. You want an inner stability that stays intact even when life shifts unexpectedly. And that desire becomes the driving force that keeps you moving forward even on the hard days, because you finally understand that emotional freedom is not given, it is built. Every breath is an invitation to return to yourself. Every choice is a chance to reinforce your strength. Every moment is an opportunity to act from self-worth rather than self-doubt. And the more you choose from that place, the more undeniable your transformation becomes. You rise with a clarity that can't be shaken, a presence that can't be ignored, and a resilience that refuses to break. You become someone who no longer waits for life to feel perfect before stepping into their power. You embody the truth that strength is not something you find, it's something you decide to become. The moment you stop negotiating with your old limitations, something shifts in the deepest part of you. You no longer search for permission to evolve. You no longer wait for someone to validate the changes you feel rising within you. You simply step into them fully without hesitation. You allow yourself to outgrow the versions of you that once operated from fear, scarcity, or survival. You recognize that you are not obligated to shrink just because others are more comfortable with you small. You realize that your growth is not a threat to the right people. It is only a threat to the environments that depended on your silence, your doubt, or your self-abandonment. Your emotional strength no longer comes from suppressing your truth, but from honoring it. You stop hiding your depth just to be easier to digest. You stop dimming your intelligence, your intuition, your intensity. You stop pretending you don't feel what you feel. Instead, you let truth become the foundation you stand on. You let authenticity become the guide you trust. You let self-respect become the line you refuse to cross. And with that shift, you begin to live in alignment with your highest self rather than your wounds. You start noticing how many decisions you once made from insecurity rather than intention. How many boundaries you softened to avoid disappointing others. How many times you quieted your voice to keep the peace instead of expressing what was real. And you choose differently now. You choose to speak with clarity instead of fear. You choose to say no without guilt. You choose to walk away from emotional chaos before it consumes you. You choose to protect your mind the way you once protected everyone else's comfort. That is what self-responsibility feels like. Firm, steady, grounded. Life begins to feel cleaner, more aligned, more honest. Not necessarily easier, but more real. Every choice becomes a reflection of your worth rather than your wounds. Every step becomes an act of courage rather than compensation. You stop performing strength and start living it. You stop proving your value and start embodying it. And that embodiment subtly transforms your entire world. People sense it. Spaces shift around it. Opportunities align with it. You move through life with an energy that doesn't beg, doesn't chase, doesn't plead. It simply is. You recognize that peace is not passive, it's a discipline. You cultivate it through the boundaries you set, the habits you build, the thoughts you allow, the environments you choose, and the people you give access to. You realize that inner chaos only grows when you ignore your own truth. But when you honor your emotional limits, when you refuse to carry what isn't yours, when you choose responsibility over reaction, peace becomes the natural state of your being. Not because your life is perfect, but because you no longer abandon yourself in the process. Your transformation becomes undeniable when you stop wishing for change and start creating it through consistent, self-aligned choices. You become someone who doesn't collapse under pressure but expands through it. Someone who doesn't fear endings because you trust your ability to begin again. Someone who rises not because life is gentle but because you refuse to stay small. And as you step further into this version of yourself, you finally understand that the strength you've been searching for was never something you had to find. It was something you had to stop suppressing. The more you rise into this higher version of yourself, the more you recognize how much of your life was once shaped by the expectations of others. You see how often you molded your energy to fit environments that were never meant to hold your fullness. You understand how many times you sacrificed your needs for approval that never brought real fulfillment. And now you reclaim every part of you that was once compromised. You stop asking who you need to be for others and start asking who you refuse to stop being for yourself. That shift becomes the quiet revolution inside your spirit, the moment you realize you don't exist to keep the world comfortable. You exist to keep your soul awake. Your emotional strength deepens when you decide to treat your inner world with the same seriousness you've given your outer responsibilities. You stop brushing aside your intuition because you see how accurate it has always been. You stop rationalizing red flags because you understand that truth doesn't confuse. It clarifies. You stop rushing your healing because you understand that depth cannot be forced. And you start building your life from a place of self-honesty rather than self-denial. That honesty becomes your shield, your compass, your liberation. You begin to recognize which connections nourish your growth and which ones drain it. You see how your energy responds in different spaces. Your body signals what your mind used to ignore. You feel the tension in places that once felt normal. You feel the ease in spaces that once intimidated you. And you honor those signals now. You choose environments that expand you rather than shrink you. You choose people who value your presence rather than exploit your softness. You choose conversations that elevate your mind rather than drain your spirit. These choices become the architecture of the life you are building, one rooted in clarity, intentionality, and self-respect. You realize that healing isn't about becoming unbreakable. It's about becoming unwilling to break yourself for things that no longer align with your worth. You understand that emotional maturity is not found in how much pain you can endure, but in how quickly you refuse to tolerate what harms you. You no longer confuse familiarity with belonging. You no longer mistake intensity for love. You no longer romanticize turbulence as passion. You choose relationships that are calm, consistent, and respectful, not because you fear chaos, but because you've outgrown it. The more you honor your worth, the quieter your life becomes, and the more powerful your presence grows. You stop responding to every disruption. You stop explaining your standards. You stop apologizing for being selective. Your silence becomes intentional, not withdrawn. Your distance becomes protective, not cold. Your boundaries become a declaration that your energy is valuable and not everyone is meant to access it. And the right people understand that this version of you is not guarded. It is grounded. You start trusting the timing of your own evolution without comparing it to anyone else's journey. You stop rushing milestones out of insecurity. You stop questioning whether you are behind. You understand that your path is unfolding exactly as it needs to. Every delay taught you patience. Every disappointment strengthened your discernment. Every ending redirected your purpose. Nothing was wasted. Everything was preparation. And now you move with an inner steadiness that cannot be shaken by external noise. Your growth becomes the quiet answer to every past version of you that doubted whether transformation was truly possible. And as you continue stepping into this empowered self, you feel the truth rising within you. Nothing in your life will ever be the same, because you finally decided you deserve more than survival. You deserve alignment. You deserve peace. You deserve a life that reflects the strength you fought so long to uncover. There comes a moment when you realize that your inner world has become too important to keep betraying for temporary comfort. You feel a deeper calling rising within you, urging you to step into a version of yourself that no longer negotiates with fear or settles for fragments of your own potential. You start to sense that the life you want is not waiting for external permission. It is waiting for internal alignment. And that alignment begins the moment you decide to stop giving your power away to old patterns that never honored your growth. You start noticing the thoughts that weaken you and the ones that strengthen you. You see how often your mind has repeated ideas that were never truly yours. You catch the quiet moments where you stop yourself from dreaming because you fear disappointment. You become aware of how much you've minimized your gifts to avoid making others uncomfortable. That awareness becomes the starting point for transformation, because you can only change what you're willing to see clearly. And once you see how powerful your mind truly is, you stop allowing doubt to shape your identity. You begin shifting your self-talk from criticism to direction. You stop rehearsing your failures and start reinforcing your strengths. You stop imagining worst-case scenarios and start visualizing outcomes that align with your highest potential. Your mind becomes a tool rather than a cage, a source of momentum rather than resistance. Every thought becomes a choice, and every choice becomes a declaration of the future you are building. You no longer allow negativity to run unchecked. You train your thoughts the way an athlete trains their body, with consistency, intention, and discipline. You realize that the energy you project shapes the opportunities that come toward you. When you believe you are unworthy, life reflects that belief. When you believe you are capable, life expands around you. When you carry gratitude, you attract possibilities. When you carry scarcity, you block them. The emotional frequency you live in becomes the foundation of your reality. And as you raise that frequency through clarity, self-respect, and intention, you begin to notice how life responds. Conversations shift, people shift, opportunities shift. Your internal world creates ripple effects that transform your external world. You start defining success on your own terms. You stop chasing validation from people who are not walking your path. You stop measuring your progress against timelines that were never designed for your journey. You stop believing that worthiness is something you earn. You recognize that it is something you step into. That understanding liberates you from the pressure to prove yourself. You realize that your greatness was never meant to be conditional. It was meant to be expressed. You begin setting priorities that reflect your deeper values. You focus on habits that elevate your mind, strengthen your character, and bring you closer to your purpose. You invest your time in what builds you rather than what distracts you. You choose actions that create momentum rather than excuses that create stagnation. And each small, intentional action becomes a vote for the person you are becoming. You no longer wait for motivation to arrive. You cultivate it through discipline and clarity. Your confidence grows not from perfection, but from commitment. You trust yourself because you show up for yourself. You believe in your future because you are actively shaping it. You feel stronger because you refuse to abandon your own potential. And with every step, you move deeper into a version of yourself that is no longer afraid of pressure but guided by purpose. You realize that you are not chasing wealth, success, or recognition. You are becoming the kind of person who naturally attracts them.